Hello everybody, it's Fufu here, and today I've got a really interesting video for you. It's the top 10 most powerful Z moves in the game. Before we get into that, I'd just like to ask you to please feel free to leave any comments and any feedback about this kind of video if you enjoy it or not, because they do take quite a lot of effort and quite a lot of research, and I want to know if it's worth it. And if you do like this, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like to support. Just some housekeeping first. I need to go over the rules as to how I did these calculations. So if you're not interested in hearing how I did the calculations and you just want to know the countdown, please skip to the time link that I'll leave in the description and in the comment section below. But if you want to hear how I worked everything out, then stay tuned. So I wanted to work out what was the most powerful raw Z move. That means when a Pokemon comes straight in and uses its Z move straight away. I didn't really want to use setup and things get complicated like that, and you get more manufactured situations, which I don't think represents the real true raw power of a Pokemon. So for example, in doubles battles you can be skill swapping and doing all sorts of crazy shenanigans, which isn't really representative of a real Pokemon battle, which I think is what I want to try and represent with this list. That means no stat boosts and no setup at all. You can't do things like power trick, skill swap, anything like that, and you can't have any terrain boosts or weather boosts unless your ability sets them up for you. So really I'm looking at a Pokemon's offensive stats, the base power of the Z move that they're using, and any ability that might be able to boost that Z move further. I also want to make sure that I'm not going to just count any abilities. It's only abilities you can guarantee are going to work. So things like rivalry, when you can't determine what the opponent's gender is going to be, or download, you don't know which stat boost you're going to get. I can't count those because you can't be sure that you'll be getting them. In terms of the target, it's going to be poor Arcanine that's going to be taking all these powerful Z moves. There are two good reasons for this. Arcanine is a fire type that gets burn up, and when it uses burn up, it loses its typing, meaning that it's typeless, and that means that any incoming attacks can't be super effective or not very effective, which gives it all types of incoming attacks a level playing field. What's also important is that Arcanine's defense and special defense are equal, so physical and special attackers are again on a level playing field. So now that's out of the way, we can get on with the countdown, and I'd be really interested to see what you predict will make the list. So if you want to leave in the comments what you think might be around in the top, that'll be really interesting for me to read because I want to know what you guys are thinking.
Number 10.
Now straight away, this one was a little bit surprising for me. Not that this Pokemon is not very good or not very powerful, but just because you don't see it and it's quite overlooked, and that is going to be Rampardos. Rampardos has a base 165 attack stat, which is massive, and it's overlooked because I guess it's quite slow and not particularly bulky, but it hits so hard. And what it also gets is the move Head Smash, which turns into a massively powerful Continental Crush at base 200 power. Very, very strong. And off that attack stat, it is obviously going to do a lot of damage when you think about it.
Number 9.
Now this Pokemon is actually one of my favorites, and again, not something that I'd necessarily expect to see in this list, but boy am I glad that it made it, and that is Behem. Behem has a very powerful Shattered Psyche coming off Future Sight, which has a good base 120 power to begin with. Behem also has a pretty decent special attack stat of 125, but where its real power comes from is its ability Analytic. Now this one I was a bit dubious as to whether I could include in this list because I wasn't always sure that you get the Analytic boost, but because we are going up against an Arcanine as the target, Arcanine will always outspeed, so Behem will always get that boost, and Behem is generally quite a slow Pokemon, so you can generally count on it getting that Analytic boost, and it is going to do so much damage. So Analytic, if you're slower than the opponent, you will get a 1.3 times boost to your attacks, and so it's going to be a very powerful Shattered Psyche coming off Behem, and I'm very glad, so happy to see that here at number 9.
Number 8.
At number 8 is our first legendary Pokemon, and it's going to be Taboo Coco. Now this thing is probably quite obviously going to make this list, and that is because it has seen a lot of competitive use recently because it is so powerful, and it's mainly due to its ability Electric Surge, which sets up the electric terrain. That boosts all of its electric type moves, including Gigavolt Havoc, which is the Z move we're going to be using here. You might think, is it going to be a special Gigavolt Havoc or a physical Gigavolt Havoc? Well, actually, Thunder has a higher base power Gigavolt Havoc than its most powerful physical move Wild Charge, but because Taboo Coco has more physical attack stat at 115 compared to its special attack at 95, the Wild Charge is actually the better option for Gigavolt Havoc here. And that powerful Gigavolt Havoc is what is going to make Taboo Coco have the 8th most powerful Z move in the game.
Number 7.
At number 7, we have a pair of monsters. That is Kyurem Black and Kyurem White. They have huge offensive stats, Kyurem Black having a base 170 attack stat and Kyurem White having a base 170 special attack stat. They both also have signature moves which are super powerful, and that is for Kyurem Black Free Shock and for Kyurem White Ice Burn. They are both 140 power, and when they are a Sub-Zero Slammer Z move, they're both 200 power. Coming off those huge offensive stats, they are both the same and they are both devastating. And that is why Kyurem makes number 7 on this list.
Number 6.
At number 6, we have the second Gigavolt Havoc user on this list, and it doesn't have to rely on electric terrain for a power boost, so it must be a powerful Pokemon. It is going to be Magnezone. Magnezone can rely on a slightly more powerful Z move to base its attack off, and that is Zap Cannon. It also has a higher offensive stat than Taboo Coco, but what makes it higher than Taboo Coco in the list is that it also gets the analytic ability, much like Behem. So that is where Magnezone is going to get that power boost from, and it's going to have the most powerful Gigavolt Havoc on this list.
Number 5.
Now we are getting to the top half of the list, and we have the last Pokemon on here that does not rely on its ability for a power boost. It is just raw attacking power, and that is coming from Deoxys Attack. It's in the name. So Deoxys Attack has a very high special attack stat of 180. That is huge, and it also gets access to the move Psycho Boost to base its Shattered Psyche off, which gets to base 200 power, and just those two things in combine are enough to make Deoxys Attack number 5 on this list.
Number 4.
Just pipping Deoxys Attack to the post is another Shattered Psyche user, which is Taboo Lele. Now, another one that I think a lot of people would guess would make this list just because it sees a lot of competitive usage. It has that Psychic Surge ability, boosting its psychic attacks, and a very high special attack stat of 130. The only thing that slightly holds Taboo Lele back from being right at the top is that it doesn't have very high base power moves to base its Z move off. It has to rely on Psychic. But even having said that, it is a force to be reckoned with.
Number 3.
Taking the bronze medal is a non-legendary Pokemon, the highest ranked non-legendary Pokemon in this list, so definitely a title to hold proudly. This is going to be Porygon Z using Breakneck Blitz. Now, why does Porygon Z get so high? Well, it has a very good special attack stat to start with, and it gets a very powerful Breakneck Blitz off of Hyper Beam. But the real powerhouse behind this is that it gets the ability Adaptability. That means that the stab boost for its Breakneck Blitz is not 1.5 times, but 2 times. So it has a Breakneck Blitz with 200 base power, but after stab, that turns into 400 base power off a very good special attack stat. No wonder Porygon Z gets the 3rd most powerful Z move in the game.
Number 2.
At number 2, we see the king of the Taboos, Taboo Lulu. It outdamages Taboo Lele, even though they have the same offensive stats and the same terrain boost. Taboo Lulu gets a more powerful move to base its Z move off. It gets Wood Hammer, which turns into a hugely powerful Bloom Doom. This thing is so strong, and it's really cool to see Taboo Lulu getting some recognition as a great Tapu in this list. Now, before we get into the most powerful Pokemon, I'm just going to make some honorable mentions here of some really cool Pokemon that didn't quite make it on the list. Slacking has a massive base 160 attack stat and a very powerful Breakneck Blitz coming off a Giga Impact, but unfortunately it doesn't have an ability to help it out, so it doesn't quite make it. Some Pokemon that do have great abilities that help them out, but don't have the high base power moves to make a powerful Z move are things like Araquanid, Crawdaunt, and Yveltal and Xerneas. Then there are a couple of Pokemon that are really cool, and I'd say probably quite overlooked too, that have a great ability and a really powerful Z move, but just don't have the base stats to back them up. So a couple of examples of that are Torkoal with powerful Eruption boosted by the Drought, but only coming off a base 85 special attack stat, and Dragalge that has the adaptability boosting its devastating Drake off a Draco Meteor, but it only has a base 97 special attack stat. And then there are a couple of examples that are actually so close and they don't really have any flaws, they just don't quite make the list, and that is Medicham with the pure power ability and a very powerful high jump kick, but it doesn't quite make it. And there's also Diggersby that can base a very powerful Breakneck Blitz off of Last Resort or Giga Impact, and it has that huge power ability, but again, it doesn't quite make it onto the list. So now it's time for the number 1 most powerful Z move in the game, and that is going to be Kyogre. And when you think about it, it's pretty obvious really. Kyogre has a massive special attack stat at 150. It also has an insanely powerful Hydro Vortex move based off of Water Spout. It gets that base 200 power Hydro Vortex hitting so hard. But even after that, it has the Drizzle ability to boost its water type moves by 1.5 times further in the rain. And this thing just beats everything else in the list by quite a margin. So even after Arcanine has gone for a burn up and Hydro Vortex is no longer super effective, one Hydro Vortex from this Kyogre is going to take out 2 1/4 Arcanine, and none of the others were even able to take out 2 Arcanine. So Kyogre really is putting in the work here. It's so powerful, such a monster, and it's really cool to see it at the top of this list. So there you have it. That is my countdown of the top 10 most powerful Z moves in the game. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know your feedback and let me know if there were any surprises on this list that you didn't expect to get there. All that's left to be said is I've been Fufu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.